Good afternoon. Welcome to the Henry County Commissioners Work Session for July 16th, 2024. We're here today to discuss with DLZ the work on the renovations of the courthouse.
Thank you. As we're proceeding, working on this, with that, way back when, 2 years ago, probably almost 3 now, we did the study, with that and kind of went through and, saw what things need, some attention to the project. We knew there were, we didn't know everything about the electrical, but there was things out there, with it, but their service that went through was actually all right. With it. There wasn't anything wrong with it. It's just a lot of things had been done to it in the past. Part of our project in here, since we're getting rid of all the window air conditioners, is we have to provide some HVAC there in the basement with that. And that's going to cause us to hook up to some electrical somewhere. So Robert here, he'll explain a little bit more, but he came out here a couple weeks ago and did a lot more in-depth look as far as what's there with it. So he's going to go through, explain what he found and what we're going to do on this project and what other potential things could be done.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Henry had just said there, what you've got before you is what's literally on the exterior of the building there coming in. And first thing you see there is the utility coming in across, the overhead lines coming across. And they hit the side of the building right there, and then they go through the donuts, and then basically you count, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weatherheads on the building. Those 6 weatherheads bring service to what I counted 11 service disconnects in this building. There are 2, technically 3 single-phase service disconnects and 8 3-phase disconnects. And what is it? The 5th weatherhead is a little tough to see, is literally right behind the donuts there. If you look to your left, look to the right, just there, if they're coming across the building right there, it's kind of obscured right there where all the ties are, where they've spliced into the cables coming across there. Yep, that's it right there. That little weatherhead basically feeds to 7 3-phase disconnects. It comes down that, hits what I want to say is the abandoned meter box there. They're using as a pull box. So they're splicing it, and one feed goes to the right to what the disconnector on the wall, which is technically your elevator service disconnect. And then it goes around to the left to the air conditioning units out here. There's a panel out here that's got 6 disconnects in it. There's no main, so there's 6 services there. So there's 7 of the 3-phase disconnects. The other 3-phase is the one that's above all those. It runs across the top above the window there. And that comes down right beside the elevator disconnect, goes into the building, and it comes into what appears to be one of the original meter boxes inside the main electric room, goes through it, hits a service disconnect there, and then feeds down to another service disconnect before coming out of it, back out, and then rises up. It actually comes out the furthest conduit to the left there, and actually goes up above the roof. And it's labeled as courtroom south AC. So I'm not sure if that's old or what it's actually feeding up here. We think there might have been an existing air handle or something that fed this area at one time. So I don't, and it's on and energized, so I don't know if it's actually connected to anything up here or not, but I know that's what's coming up here. Going to the next weatherhead, and it actually is the meter weatherhead. And it's actually between, you see the group with the 3 of them, with the 2 large ones, and there's a little one beside it. And it's actually between the 3-phase ones. If you see which one I'm talking about? It's kind of hard to see, but it's Yeah, it's kind of that one right there. And that's actually your primary meter here. So all the services, there's leads coming off it to go to those donuts down there and it goes down and that's how you got a single meter here. And then if you keep going to the left there, the two large weatherheads there, that's for the 800 amp single phase service. It comes into the building there and goes to the MDP panel downstairs in the main electric room. And then there's a little bitty weatherhead beside it. And literally that is, I think it's a 20 amp circuit that comes down to a disconnect that's right beside MDP. That was allowed for the fire alarm. That's how they fed your fire alarm panel off of it. Yeah, at one time you were allowed to bring a service in for fire alarm, fire protection, or anything like that. So that one's actually technically is still allowed. And you're allowed a single phase service and you have different characteristics. So you're allowed to have a 3-phase service disconnect, but not the 11 total. The last service disconnect is not actually coming from the outside. It's actually a tap off of the 800 amp service inside the main electric room. And there's no breaker, so I'm assuming it's tapping the bus directly, and it comes in off the panel, up over the door, and then down. There's a disconnect that's on the wall on the other side of the door, and there's a sub load center actually right beside it. So that's actually your 11th disconnect. The one thing I have not been able to find is any kind of grounding at all that are bonding all these systems together. And there's actually no labeling on any of these either. So part of my primary concern is if there's anything that goes wrong here, if a fire been anywhere, I'm not sure that firefighters will know where to shut off all the power, for one. With all the disconnects.
Not with 11 disconnects.
Yeah, so to me, the first thing you gotta do is put some kind of labeling on there to identify these. That's an easy part. But the grounding part is separate. It can also lead to a shock hazard because there's no way for the grounding to go across anywhere. So I believe you got a fire hazard and you got a shock hazard because of it. In looking at what we're doing for the current project for the AC, we are going to replace the MDP panel. And
That price is already figured in for the project, replacing that panel.
when I replace that panel, I will provide new grounding, so at least we'll have that part grounded solidly. You can eventually add to that grounding for any additional services, but when that new panel comes in, we'll take care of the tap. So we'll eliminate that, and we can even bring the fire alarm panel off of an existing service so we can get rid of that service too. So you'll be down to 8 disconnects. What I've kind of priced together, just to give you a ballpark idea, it's going to roughly be about $150,000. And this doesn't include what Duke may charge to bring in the services. And that's just to fix the 3-phase services. And what that would entail would be to put in another panel, 3-phase panel beside the single-phase panel. And that way your disconnects would be grouped by code. You'd still have to have your labeling and everything to identify them, but you can have them right beside one another and you can have all your grounding and bonding together like that.
So when he's saying 150,000, this isn't work that has to happen as part of this project. This would be additional above and beyond. We've talked with our code consultants. The work that we're doing right now, all these code issues that you have are downstream from the work that we have, existing conditions that we're not touching with that. So it's an existing condition. Nothing that we're doing is going to be against the code with that. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of the disconnects that we're putting together, so it'll improve the situation that you have with that. So at a minimum, I would suggest doing what he said and then also doing the labeling properly, so that when someone goes down to that electrical room, it's identified where all of these disconnects are. There's those 6 that are outside with that maybe they do, maybe they don't, but you know, when a fireman comes to the building with that, if there's nothing there now to tell them where things are at, I don't think that they would know.
Yeah, if they come in right now, you're still gonna have energized circuits, which could be a very bad thing. So like you said, the least amount of work that we're doing right now would be to provide the labeling to identify the exterior panel out there, the elevator disconnect and the disconnect for that three-phase that's coming in, it's coming up here somewhere. So we'll at least identify all those. And then conversely, there'll also be tags put on those that would identify not only the remainder plus the 800 that we're putting in.
Go through a little bit, working with Duke, what conversations you've had with them on what the vision would be for outside here.
Yeah, I reached out to Duke and basically just asked them preliminarily what we could do. Of course, they don't want to commit to anything until we get some kind of work order, so it didn't go any further, but part of my train of thought would be we would bring in something underground, get rid of everything you see on the side of the building up here and have like a pad mount or two sitting out there, and then bring in services from it, which would, in essence, clean up. You lose everything on the side of the building with the exception of the city meter and box that's out there, which I think,
I'm not sure that the city actually uses it. I know, Steve, you and I have had that discussion as well. Sorry, I'm not on my mic. You and I have had that discussion about that city meter. I'll get a hold of the mayor and find out, but I'm pretty sure the discussion was, it's not used. I think it may have been put out there for either one of the cruise ins or something, but I'm not sure that it's used, but we'll verify that one.
I mean, if it's not being used, I know we were out there and they said they still use the receptacles out there, but I believe you guys use the receptacles as the county uses those. So if that's the case, maybe we can bring those in off of the building, from inside the building, and refeed them. And that way that can go away as well.
So where we're at with this, like we said, the project, way that we're gonna have the documents go right now are having that working through there, but we need to discuss, you guys need to discuss, do you want to make this part of the project? Is it an alternate to the project? We do need to get information from Duke as far as with that, until we really have that with them and to know what they are willing to do and what they're, would charge for that. We're a little held up on that.
That's a good point, because Duke, they do some kind of system where they'll look at the return of values. And since we're not actually adding load outside of a little bit of AC, they may bill for the full amount of their work. So there will be additional monies on top of the 150 from Duke itself to do their work.
So I don't think there's anything right now, in order for us to continue, there's nothing that we need from you. Today was just to let you know what we found, where this is at with that. We're going to continue to work with Duke and try to get that done on through there with that. But we just wanted to make you aware of, if you want to, this is what would have to happen to kind of alleviate some of the issues with the electrical system. I'm sure you all have a gazillion electrifying questions for us.
Well, my first question is, can we get this in a report form?
Yes.
Thank you. Because if I had to regurgitate everything that you just said, I would not be able to do so.
I wouldn't either. That's why Robert.
Well, that's kind of why I gave you this, kind of describes what everything, it visually shows you what all is there, so. And I do-
Absolutely. I need both pictures and. Thank you.
Definitely like the idea of it all being underground when we don't have to look at it.
So right now in the drawings, as you look at that picture, you've got those two windows down there. Obviously, the one's got all the electrical going through it. Those windows are not original to the building. Those were cut in at one time or another. So our plan right now with this, let's say we don't do anything with this electrical out through here, we are going to get a stone to closely match that and close those windows up with that. So since they weren't original, you can kind of see around those square openings with that, how it was patched up, the masonry after they cut it in through there with that. We're still gonna do the, lowering the grade around the window like we've discussed with that to help alleviate all that moisture getting into the lower level there with that. But that would help a little bit in this situation, so.
Commissioner Dellinger, you see, you keep your finger on the button, but you don't push it.
I was gonna say, you may not like what I have to say, because this all comes at a cost that we didn't plan on, and it's money we didn't really expect to have to spend. I don't have a problem taking it out of what we pay DLC. I will gladly say, thank you. I mean, I'm like Joe, I like the idea of eliminating all the mess on the side of the building and coming underground. I guess until we get a total figure here, what we're talking about, I mean, we're already 150,000 above what we were originally planning. And you're talking like it could be considerably more, and I want to know what considerably means.
Agreed, yes. So like I said, we're going to continue on without this into here, with it. There's no increase in what our budget amount is right now with that, but it doesn't take care of all the electrical issues you have at this point.
I mean, at minimum, we need to look at obviously labeling all the disconnects and then looking at the grounding at minimum on our side, right?
And I agree, that's something that should have been done and needs to be done. I'm actually somewhat surprised that it's not labeled somewhere, but, I know how things get lost in the shuffle once they get started.
Well, I will say that I didn't see any specific grounding. Let me clarify that. I didn't see any specific grounding, but what they could have been doing is using the conduit for grounding. But under, the number of times this thing's been tapped and everything, I don't know if the continuity is still there. And I know for a fact if they are doing that, the systems aren't bonded the way they should be. So there may be some grounding there, but I don't want to say it's complete.
Okay.
And the only labels that I have seen is there's a label on the elevator disconnect, it just basically says 240 volts. But if you actually go to the disconnect inside the elevator machine room, it tells you that there's a service disconnect outside. And that's the only spot that I saw where it says anything about there's a service disconnect anywhere.
So then as part of our project, the labeling of that, is that something that we can show and have something inside the electrical room there?
Yeah, we kind of have to. So I will have them affix labels on, you'll see a new label on the elevator disconnect. You'll see a new label on the panel over here. And then there'll be one on the disconnect inside for the feed coming up here, as well as the new 800 amp single phase that we're putting in.
And we'll probably have to add a note inside that room as far as the location. We can show a little plan with that, notify or showing the location of those other disconnects.
Yeah.
So there's really, until we start looking deeper, there's really no way to know what Duke's charges would be for any of this.
Correct. And like I said, they wouldn't do anything. And as I called the 800 number, so I kind of stopped right there. I wanted to come and present it to you. I mean, I'm sure it would be just, once I contacted them, then the engineer will want to meet on site to go over it. So I know there'd be at least one more site visit, and then it'd be like, what can they do? And it then becomes up to what they can actually do. We think there should be sufficient space out there for a transformer, but we'll put one there.
Well, it's like, I remember we've had conversations about eliminating the poles down Ray Street and burning all that underground anyway, so that would take away those unsightly poles that everyone seems to be saying that need to be eliminated. If they're gonna go underground across from there, then I don't know what that cost would be. I know
Well, I
at one
remember
time,
the estimated cost we got for taking the poles out.
it was like $30,000, wasn't it? or
Oh, I
something?
was thinking it was more like 70 or 80.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking it
I
was more
thought
like
the one time
70
that
or
we had
80.
talked to Main Street about doing it, and they were,
Yeah.
so I don't know what that would entail to eliminate those and put that all underground.
But we're far off on numbers. I'm not saying you're wrong. It could be 30. I don't know
Well,
where I said 80.
This has been an ongoing 4-year discussion.
Yes, it has
So
been,
it has
yeah.
changed probably from the
Mhm.
time that I talked to him and you talked to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we had for you today. Appreciate your time.
Well, it's not as bad as what I thought you were gonna come and say.
Well, we don't want, we don't like surprises. I'm sure
Oh,
you don't want any
absolutely.
surprises with that. But as we're going through this, looking at things with it, we just felt it was very important to let you know where it was at and to let you know what you have. We'll get a report in through there to you, send it off to you so you have that.
Yeah, and then we can determine what we want to do and how we want to move forward, alternate, put it a part of this project, whatever.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you for your time, gentlemen. At this time, we will adjourn. Then a motion, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion carries 3-0.